when we start to paint the picture bigger and bigger, like we've done with all these lacks of mentorship and development, all these things, it makes sense. It makes sense why you are exactly at where you're at in this moment. But at some point, we need to stop being victims to where we are at and start telling ourselves the truth and start taking action. And I know it's easier said than done, but let's start somewhere. And maybe you've tried before and it didn't work. Okay, we have to dare to believe in ourselves again, because what if all those previous moments were leading to this moment? And this is that moment. This is that moment where you get to go again.
It's harder than ever to sit through the discomfort and the boredom of and the uncertainty of basically any challenge that's going to stretch you beyond your current capacity and force you to actually develop a skill that you don't currently have. What is my Kobe contribution? What is my Michelangelo contribution? What is my Einstein contribution? What dream can I dream that will allow me to bloom into the most beautiful flower that I could ever conceive and help bring other people into that blooming as well.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this podcast. My name is Blake Chalfant. I'm here with my dear brother, Michael Soul. And today we are just simply sitting down to have a conversation because we have both been in this wild journey of really trying to find our way in this chaotic, confusing time on Earth, and specifically trying to live a life that is purpose-driven and creating change and making impact and making money in a way that is deeply nourishing and repairing these wounds of the past that we have seen. And so it feels really important to be here and to really open up the space, and not in a way that is we have finished the journey and this is how you do it, but actually we are in the journey. We are on the path. We're trying to figure it out, and it's not easy all the time. And I think we both had pretty challenging, annoying days today. But we're going to get into all the things. But before we do that, Michael, I would love to hear a little bit about who you are, a little introduction, and then also a little bit about your story of coming to being the person that you are today, and your past.
Thank you very much, Blake. Yeah. So I am Michael Soul. I am a writer. I'm a musician. I'm a human being that is doing my best in each waking day to take my bow and aim and fire at my dreams and my aspirations, and dealing with the fallout of that not being an easy process, dealing with the massive amounts of difficulties and resistance that are required to rewrite the story of who I am and what I'm capable of, and living in that tension between this clear vision and this felt somatic experience of having a powerful energy, voice, presence speak through and inhabit my being, and knowing that I can align to that, and then simultaneously struggling with the most basic stuff on a day-to-day basis of is it okay to drink coffee? Is this something that I can do? How do I transition from engaging in activities that aren't really serving me or aligned to where I am right now to where I want to be, and navigating that experience. And I say that because that's my true lived experience right now, and I feel that it's very important for me as a being to be as clear and aligned with the reality of my situation and speak to that as possible, because it's a little murky. It's hard to find my way when I start suppressing or twisting or only wanting to show the happy, well put together version of myself, but not be honest about the struggles, not be honest about pain. And so that's a little snippet. There. Getting into a little bit more of my story. Hmm. That's a big, beautiful question. I The arc of my life is that I have always felt like an outsider. The environment that I was born into, going through school, the entire time I was in public school, like my experience was of like, how come all these people understand how to fit in? How come all these people understand social dynamics? How come everybody over there, everybody else seems to know how to exist, but I'm over here like fumbling my way through the dark? And that really defined my experience for a long time. In school, like it was really that internal narrative of being an outcast, and I can understand that now in retrospect because of some really key formative experiences that happened early on that set me apart in my own mind from the rest of the world. And kind of that meta arc, that meta narrative, uh, for a lot of my life has been that I'm broken, that there's something wrong with me and only me. Everyone else is chilling. Nobody else deals with these problems that I'm dealing with. I'm here isolated in my little bubble, in my little internal jail cell of not being right, of not knowing what to do, of not having it together. And that really dictated a lot of my interactions, that dictated a lot of the choices that I made throughout my life. And I carried that belief with me into like moving out into college, into the kind of choices that I was making of what kind of school I felt like I was capable of getting into, what kind of programs I thought like I was capable of getting into. And yeah, that that is some heavy stuff. And throughout my life, um, for better or worse, I felt like I was always looking for something externally to solve that problem, be the balm to that wound that I was carrying. And that's something that I didn't get from my father. That's something that I didn't get from friendships. Didn't grow up feeling like I had any true brothers, like I had any mentors that I could lean upon that were showing me the ropes. And due to some familial situations, like both of my parents got pretty distracted by their own lives at a pretty crucial time. And I know that I can speak for myself, but both me and my sister kind of had to grow up a little early in some ways. And yeah, I know that, I'm sure we'll get into this, but I know that I'm not the only one that feels like there was a gaping lack of mentorship, a deep missing piece around like true elders that I could turn to. The most that I had was just whoever I could find on YouTube or social media that like had a platform to talk about. Like the only raising, the only like external thing that I felt like I could lean on was like the internet in a really strange way, like media and TV and movies and archetypes and TV shows and things like that. Yeah, it's a very interesting experience growing up the way that I did. And I found my own way back. I found my own way to navigate a lot of that pain. I found my own way to learn how to connect with people and find mentors and get over a lot of those internal barriers and connect with greater forces that I think I'd always been looking for, but it felt like it was behind this like gated doorway of these spiritualities and religions that I wasn't born into and didn't feel like I belonged in. And yeah, it's still a very much a in progress healing process, but that's a little bit of my story. That's a little bit of my arc. And that's a little bit of the medicine that I carry and is my responsibility to transmute and deeply learn about so that I can be that mentor for that past version of myself that didn't have it, so that I can step into that father role, so that
Mm,
I can become
yeah.
the guide to the underworlds of the soul that I have, for whatever reason, my soul and my creative design has led me to explore. And it's a very strange place to be, trying to like find a way to fit into a world that feels like it wasn't designed for me, or that I wasn't designed for this world.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's I think that feels good for now. I'd love to hear a little bit
Yeah,
about either
man.
your thoughts on that or a little bit about your story as well.
Yeah, dude. Just want to say thank you so much for bringing the depth, something that I appreciate about you so much, and that you're speaking to with your soul's attraction to the underworld. And it's something that I think we both share in many ways, and we've had many conversations about. And, you know, I feel this way, and I know you feel this way, but it's like, how can we not go there? How can we look away from that? We feel it. We feel our soul's desire to descend to that place, to be fully honest, fully transparent, to look at the deep shadow things and bring it into community and not create more shame. It's like, how can we not do that? And so I so appreciate that, and I just so feel all the people listening to your story and are saying, "Me too." Wow. Thank you for articulating so beautifully the experience that I've had my whole life, the experience that maybe I'm still having, and just like this. Yeah. So I deeply appreciate that. And I resonate with so much of your story. Um, Something that I have, I mean, on the surface, my story is like, I don't know, the classic boy being raised in the suburbs of the US. It feels like, I played soccer my whole life. I had two parents, a brother. We did all the things. I went to the public school. I had the friends. Like on the surface, it looked like I had everything. I was really good at soccer. I was hanging out with the cool kids. And, and now that I look back on it, though, something I've recently uncovered is that there was always this feeling like there was something that everyone else had that for whatever reason I didn't have. Like it appeared to me that everyone else around me like felt like they were good enough, and like they felt like they were whole. Like they carried this sense of wholeness that I just like always felt like I didn't have. And I'd never had words to put to that until recently. And it is that the thing that I feel like felt like I didn't have was wholeness, was like innate wholeness at the core foundation of my being. There was just like this weird break where it wasn't quite there. And so I think that's like a big part that kind of haunted me for most of my development, was always having to compensate for that, what felt like a break in my being. And so that showed up in so many different areas, in friend groups and friendships, and always feeling like I had to keep people's attention to keep them around, because if it was just me being me and I wasn't, saying the right things or whatever, why would they want to be with me? Because I'm not innately whole. I'm not innately a sufficient human being unless I'm doing something performative. And so, that shows up with friends, but also intimate relationships, and like just, if there was that good looking girl or whatever, like why would she want to be with me when there's like all these other people who are actually whole and complete? um and so I mean, intimacy and sexuality is definitely a major part of some of the more formative, like, wounding that I've had in my life. And I think a lot of it was just like shoving a dagger even deeper into that wound of like, there's something that's incomplete about my being. There's something that's not fully sufficient. Um, And so anyway, yeah, that led, I was kind of in that world of compensating and um, being asleep in our culture, and all those moments. In the same way that you shared your story, there's like all these moments that we have where something happens and goes wrong, and you know if we had mentors and elders in spaces where we knew we could go and be held and show up and be vulnerable and share what's going on, those moments that were painful could have turned into actually resilience building experiences, where we come out on the other side okay, and we don't come out wounded, and where we develop these protector parts and masks that we wear. You know, so not having that place where I felt like I could go and someone would really be able to ask me, "How are you doing?" and I wouldn't just say good, where they would know when I'm not good, and they would be able to like really open that place up within me. The person that can see you beyond your years and invite you into stepping more into that, not having that. So yeah, I think something we talk about that we'll probably keep talking about today is like just this wanderer archetype. We're just like wandering in the dark. We're stumbling in the dark. We're trying to fucking like find the door, but we're just stumbling everywhere. And so yeah, stumbling for a long time. And I think that core wound of like the incompleteness, and then the deeper longing of the soul and my heart for mentors and elders, that place within me that knows what that feels like, that remembers, for whatever reason, that part of me that remembers a more beautiful world, um, remembers an experience that I didn't have, and longs for that, like just filling all those voids with alcohol and drugs and porn and all the things for many, many years. And I think, as with so many people in this community, um, hit rock bottom at some point, and that pushed me into being really honest with myself, and waking up to just acknowledging everything that was going on. And so that's a bit about my story. And now I am, as I said in my intro, trying to find a way through, trying to find a way that is deeply uplifting to me in my life. And I'm the kind of person that won't settle for anything but like what my heart knows is possible. And so that has come with a lot of challenges, and it's been super lonely, and
Double-edged sword.
yeah, double-edged sword. So yeah, that's a bit about me. Man, unless open to any reflections or any words you have to share, but I think something that you said that also is super alive in my life, I think would be spicy to explore, is this concept of mentoring the self, like being that mentor that we needed, that we never had, and being the mentor that finally gets to help us grow into all these different areas of our life that are just underdeveloped. Like I think about most of the people in our culture today, it's like we can look at these different metrics of development, of like emotional development, social development, and then breaking it down even further than that to all these different arenas of life and different tasks. And like we're so underdeveloped. We're so underdeveloped because, kind of like, I feel like there's a couple different archetypes of what happened for people. There's people who had parents and parental figures in their life that just were completely absent, and they had no container at all, and they just were like free flowing. And then there's people who had a really shitty example of what a container and structure and like that figure that guides the way was supposed to be like, and that created just resistance and trauma around like hierarchy, really, right? When we're talking about mentoring, there's like, it's like a hierarchy. And so most people didn't actually receive the highest expression of that. And so now we're being tasked with healing our relationship to hierarchy, and through that, like learning to be that mentor for ourselves. So I'm going to pass the mic over to you to kind of open us up or share anything that's coming through for you on that.
Yeah. A couple things for me to share. Like, the lost, lonely wanderer archetype. Oh man, that image that evokes for me is like kind of strolling out in the desert, just like sand dunes, Timothy Chalamet, and the actual Dune movie for a visual reference that anyone might be listening for. But just this real feeling of like desolation more than
Mm.
anything else. This like ultimate loneliness, not loneliness like in a normal sense, ultimate like loneliness and like a drastic, cinematic, deep, cosmic sense. I'm not really
Mm.
sure how else to describe that for right now, but I feel that. I feel that big
Mm.
time. And
Mm.
uh, yeah, this lack of mentorship. I want to explore that a bit deeper as well. Maybe a little bit more specifically in the context of what you have found for yourself, like
Mm.
what the transition has been to finding those mentors in your life and the kind of feeling that you get when like from those sources that you found. And just to speak to a little bit of my own experience on that, like it's kind of wild to feel back that like I really can't think of any of like the traditional types of mentors. Like there's like no one that I ever felt was like, here, let me take you under my wing and like show you the ropes. You know, you hear about like Mike Tyson and like him getting like found by the trainer on like the street essentially, and him just
Mm.
like seeing him and being like, oh, I see what's gonna happen. You come here, I'll show you everything you need to know. I'll give you the structure that you need. Like there's a
Mm.
part of my soul that really, really longs for that. That
Mm.
really, really, really deeply grieves not having had that.
Mm.
and
Yeah.
like and you know, reflecting back, I don't know what it was like to grow up in a different time. I don't know what it was like to grow up in a tribal culture, but you know, feeling into the stories that I do have of what tribal culture was, like you're in a unit, like you're born
Mm.
into a team, and
Mm.
you're born into an extended family, and of course that came with all sorts of its own problems. Um, but there were people there to show you how to hunt. There was somebody there to show you how to survive because they needed to know those skills themselves. And the one of the side effects I feel like of like this handoff of the responsibility of parenthood, and not that it's not something that I feel is like a personal thing. It's like a systemic side effect of
Mm.
essentially handing off kids to like, okay, you're old enough for you're 4. It's time for preschool and then elementary school, and like we got to go work because we got to the way this is set up, we got to go leave, we got to go work, we got to go put a roof over everybody's head and food on the table, and like
Mm.
here go get raised by federal government infrastructure, like what like where
Yeah.
you have teachers that are dealing with like 30 kids at a time rotating out for like 150 or more a day
Or
throughout all of their
burnt
class
out.
cycles, burnt out,
Yeah.
underpaid, honestly largely underskilled as well. I think teaching is a lot more complicated than a lot of teachers knew how to handle the nuances of actually like being able to interface with children and corral them and get them to
Mm.
be interested and coordinate them in a way that wasn't like damaging to them. Like
Right.
I know interactions that I had with teachers, like there are some of them that were really, really brutal. And looking back, I'm like, I can't believe that that person thought that was an okay way to treat even like me as a 16-year-old, even me as like a
Totally.
teenager. But that's getting a
Yeah,
little into the
man.
weeds. Back to the question for you around what mentorship looks like to you now, what it
Yeah.
actually feels like to you now, what you found.
Yeah. Well, what? is really coming through from what you're sharing is like the lack of being seen for so many of us growing up in our culture. Like part of that transition from like boy to man, girl to woman is like part of boyhood is that we want to be seen. Like we want to be seen so bad and we want all the validation and we want to be that superhero, right? We want to stand out in that way. And just from studying people like Francis Weller's work on initiation and all these different indigenous cultures, like that superhero quality of the boy wanting to stand out, wanting to be special, like that was understood that that's just a part of boyhood. But it was also understood that at a certain point we needed to transition out of that into manhood, because at some point wanting to be special isn't what's actually beneficial to the grander community and the tribe and our people. We needed more people who were showing up in ordinary ways, who were willing to go chop the wood and carry the water, and so that transition into manhood, into realizing that the world is more than just you, that actually the community's needs come first, and needing more people who are able to show up in that way, who are able to see that it's bigger than just it's bigger than just me. It's like look at what look at where, when I drop trash or whatever it is, like look at where it ends up. Okay, it ends up polluting the waterways. Like that quality of seeing the bigger world and understanding the ecosystem that we're a part of, that was essential. And so all these indigenous cultures, like the large majority of them, all had certain practices and rituals that were designed to um, doula in that transition into manhood. It's like, and it was seen as such an essential part of the culture. And in breeding people who could show up and continue to, carry the community. And one of the biggest parts of those rites of passage, those initiations, was so that each of us would awaken, would recognize the essential medicine that we carry that is unique to us, the gift, the medicine that only you carry. And it was seen that, like, we need your medicine, and every single person in the community has essential medicine for the rest of us. And so you go off to these initiations and you come back, and you come back in the arms of elders in your community who say, thank you for doing this for the community, and who can nurture the medicine, the gifts that that you found within yourself during those initiations. And so, like, you see that vision of like what once was, and you see how essential those practices were to the community, because they knew that transition was absolutely essential. And you look at where we're at now, where there's zero of that. And then you can just see this boy who never transitioned to manhood, this boy who's still trying to be special, who's so dearly looking for someone to see them and to validate them and be like, yes, thank you, I see you, I see you, I see what you carry, I see these gifts that are you. Like, that's what it is. We're a bunch of boys wandering through this culture who are just dying to be seen. And because of that, we're all trying to be special. And when we're all trying to be special, we're missing out on these grander, forces and currents and cycles of life that are unfolding. And we're missing out on seeing the effects that we actually have. And we're missing out on being able to show up in a real way. Like this concept of showing up as a true adult, like Godsey speaks to. And I know that Plotkin has some other stuff around like what it means to really be an adult. And it's like, we need adults right now, but we're a bunch of boys wandering. And So I think so many people resonate with the story of feeling not enough or compensating or doing things for others. And like all of these pieces, in many ways, I think come back to this core place of we weren't seen. That core essence of who we are was not nurtured. There was no attunement by others around us. And maybe you're listening, you say, no, I had parents who loved me and they were around me. There's a difference between that. Like, I'm sure the love is pure, but there's a difference of having true adults that were there to nurture and attune to that essence of who we are and was bringing it forth. Like, another thing Francis Weller talks about is the etymology of education comes from the Latin word educare, which means basically like to draw out, to bring forth. So education was once understood as like this opportunity to draw out these essential qualities within other humans. And now you can literally study the roots of our educational system. It's literally like it was basically to create like people who could follow orders in a factory on the assembly line. Like literally, if you study that. And so
Drilling in, not drawing out.
exactly, dude. And so like that's where we are. And so, most of our parents, even though the intentions were pure, it's like they're not adults because their parents weren't adults. We've been child to child to child, and now we're the ones who are being tasked with actually growing up. And we're being tasked with growing up without parents who can help doula that experience. We're having to hold our own hand as we grow up. And it's not to say it's not all alone, because I have you and I have other friends, but it's like we're all trying to figure this out. We're babies crawling, and even though I do have people like yourself, like community is a huge part of it. There's such a core part of this process that is like I'm learning to mentor myself. I'm learning to be that parent for myself and grow up, which is huge, which is really huge. And the last thing I'll say before I pass it off, and I don't know if I actually answered your question, but is that like for so many of us, or let me rewind that for a second. Part of growing up is like these constant areas where there's a good enough stretch zone. So where we're faced with a challenge that is a stretch, but it's not too much. It's not too overwhelming. It's a good enough stretch. And so through those moments, we learn to trust ourselves. We learn to know that we can survive challenge, and we can make it through challenge. We can do hard things. And so over time, that muscle continually growing and growing, like you develop this core foundation of like resilience. I can face challenge. I can trust myself that when like I'm really going through it, I can figure it out. I can figure this out. But what happened for so many of us is that we were faced with different situations where it was way too much. It was far outside of that stretch zone. And this is what you're talking about with like you and your sister having to grow up when you were young, growing up far beyond your years. We're faced with these experiences. And so maybe some people like yourself, like you grow up, but for a lot of people, we shut down and we disassociate. And in some ways, we learn that like we can't trust ourselves because in the past, we've been given these massive tasks and we didn't have the capacity to make sense of that. We didn't have the capacity at that point to be like, oh, this is just way too big. And in ideal development, we would be given, less weight and things like that. Like we didn't have that capacity to like sense make and create stories around it. And so usually what happens, we shut down and we learn that like the world is just like overwhelming and really big and challenging. And so what you and I are doing on this path that we're walking is like the path that we're walking, going against the grain of the norm of like just following orders and working a 9 to 5 and working your way up the corporate ladder and just like having papers dropped off at your desk every day and then putting your head down and doing busy work. This path of actually like leading our lives, it's touching on, I think, some of those core wounds of like when life felt like it was too much and we couldn't handle it and we wanted to shut down and all that. And we're doing that again. We're like developing that place that was never really developed. And so it's like, yeah, there's a fuck ton on this journey that we're on. Like you're saying, like you had a massive tech issue today and all these things. And we're learning to hold ourselves in these moments of overwhelm where we want to run away, and that like when adversity and challenge comes up, I can figure it out.
Oh, yeah. I feel like what you're talking about is like the core developmental challenge of the times right now is on that. There's so many opportunities to dissociate. There's so many high stimulus activities. You can go drinking and just not think about it. You can sit and smoke away a day if that's your prerogative. You can just like get involved, and this is one of my stories, drop into video game land and just like not really worry about anything beyond like this awesome fantasy world that you're inside of, and like the characters and everything like that. And like it's harder than ever to sit through the discomfort and the boredom of like, and the uncertainty of basically any challenge that's going to stretch you beyond your current capacity and like force you to actually develop a skill that you don't currently have. Like every single long-term thing that feels like it's worth doing, like making the transition from like, hey, I want to learn how to draw and make that a part of my life and make that a part of my vocation. Like that is not wrong. That is not something that should not be pursued. Like just because something does not have immediate economic solvency and viability, like there's such a pervasive sense that all of these different aspects of life are inconsequential or don't matter or like should be hobbies or side quests just because they don't have like a level of utility that's going to get you job security and health insurance. Like that when you were mentioning earlier about like the path that we're on of going against the grain a little bit, to provide a little bit of context for anybody, like at least for myself, the specific path that I feel like I'm on is learning how to hunt. Like not like learning how to go out and make my life the way I desire it to be. And not from a place of like, I want like grills and a Rolex and like a nice Beamer and like a sweet house. Like that personally is not even in my sphere of interest. Like the there's this quote that I drew out and put on my wall. Like the ultimate creative act is the creation of a new version of yourself. Shout out Barry Michael, shout out Phil Stutz. Like the level of I see people writing online, and it's in the context of like the image they're trying to portray, but there's somebody who's really stuck with me named Zach Pogrob, and he writes about obsession, and not obsession for like just the point of like neuroticism, but obsession like inspired by Kobe, inspired by the level of dedication and devotion to sit and watch basketball in the dark for 6 hours, to get up and be in the gym longer than anybody else, like drilling like a jab step for an hour at a time, like a single move. Like there's not that many people that are willing to do that. And I'm not saying that is what we should all aspire to do. I'm not saying that the goal is to become the Kobe. For some people, that might be exactly what you want. That might be exactly what like the key, like the fire that you want to light. But what I feel is available for the entire human species. Like, granted, I also feel like there's an additional responsibility because, in all honesty, not everybody has the opportunity to sit and have this kind of conversation. Not everybody has the opportunity to tune in with tech and learn from this library of Alexandria that is opening up. Like,
but if you're listening to this, then you do.
If you're listening to this, then you do. And I personally feel not from a place of shame, because that doesn't help anybody. Shame does not help anybody. But for myself, I was just scrolling, feeling bad about my life, and I came across this video of some dude from India, and like he just was showing his day of like waking up at 4:30, splashing water on his face, like going and doing like his paper route, doing a jog before he went to work, working all day long, going back, and like I don't have to boil water to drink it. That is still a thing that a lot of people on the planet have to do. And like, so what I say, why I'm saying that is an invitation for those of us who are able to participate in this conversation of like, we're in a really awesome position. We're in a really powerful position to orient ourselves towards like a higher purpose, orient ourselves towards like a mission of meaning, a mission of like, what can I do in this life? What is my Kobe contribution? What is my Michelangelo contribution? What is my Einstein contribution? Like what what dream can I dream that will allow me to bloom into the most beautiful flower that I could ever conceive, and help bring other people into that blooming as well? I feel like that is a crucial piece. Like, not like just like, don't do it for the freaking infinity pools and like the Maserati. Like don't just for don't
Yeah.
like I feel like it would be, I feel like there's an opportunity to bloom together, and that feels like
Totally.
that feels like worth trying for. And I know, and you know, Blake, that it can't just be, I'm going to get a safe job and work until I retire at 65. Like, that story just isn't going to cut it. Like, in the state of the world, like, we're going to have to learn to hunt. We're going to have to learn to create new incentive structures, because the incentive structures are what drives the behavior of systems. And when the entire incentive structure of a system, it's just a race to the bottom. That's why we see a lot of the stuff that we're seeing in the world. Conversation for a different time. But
totally, dude.
Yeah. Like dreaming a dream, and being willing to devote the time, energy, resources, and intention to at least try to make it happen. That's something that we can all do.
You'll rest so good at the end of your life knowing that you tried. And the thing is, like, dreams are real. Like, the dreams that you carry are real. And the phrase I keep coming back to is dare to dream. Like, dare to dream. You all have dreams. And dare to actually start letting those dreams be your North Star. And like, we don't need to try and make this conversation applicable to everyone in the world, but whoever, the people listening to this conversation, for the most part, you have the capacity to start working towards your dreams. It doesn't have to be quit your job and do all of that stuff, but start small, start slow. But, you know, listening to this conversation, you know where you're at on this spectrum, and we have to start by telling ourselves the truth. Where are you at? Are you working the job that you've been miserable for years and years and years, and you know you have the dreams, but you're afraid to take action? Like, it's all okay. It's all okay. When we start to paint the picture bigger and bigger, like we've done with all these lacks of mentorship and development, all these things, it makes sense. It makes sense why you are exactly at where you're at in this moment. But at some point, we need to stop being victims to where we are at and start telling ourselves the truth and start taking action. And I know it's easier said than done, but let's start somewhere. And maybe you've tried before and it didn't work. Okay, we have to dare to believe in ourselves again, because what if all those previous moments were leading to this moment? And this is that moment. This is that moment where you get to go again. I feel like a huge part of this journey that we're on, in this mentoring, for me at least, this muscle that I'm working on developing right now is like, I'm going to have a target. I'm going to aim my arrow at something. And it's going to be a little bit in that stretch zone that we talked about. It's not going to be too much, but it's going to be a stretch. It's going to scare me a little bit. And I'm going to try and show up my hardest every day. And it's not going to be perfect. And there's going to be boxes that go unchecked at the end of the day. And there's going to be days where I don't do as much as I know I could do. And I get to hold myself in that. I get to hold the part of me that has been raised upon shame, that has been motivated by shame my whole life, that when I see those unchecked boxes at the end of the day, that part of me that wants to just beat the shit out of myself and be like, you messed up, you failed, so let's just throw this whole journey away and stop trying at all. Because looking at myself in the mirror at the end of the day with unchecked boxes is so uncomfortable. And so I'm getting the opportunity to hold that part of me and to reparent him and be like, you know what? You tried and maybe it wasn't your best, but we're going to tell ourselves the truth. There was gas left in the tank, and tomorrow we're going to try harder again. And there's so many different layers to the parts that come up on this, but it's like this muscle of trying my hardest, falling short, and that being okay. Like the mantra for me is that your best is good enough. Your best is good enough. That's it. And sometimes your best wasn't as good as you knew you could have gone. If that makes any sense. It kind of sounds like a mind twist, but it's like sometimes your best is disassociating on the couch all day and watching TV. And it's like, but can we tell ourselves the truth that that's not how we want to show up every day? So I'm getting a little lost in the weeds here. But yeah, I feel like what you're speaking to, there's all these different streams that are flowing into the same confluence. And so it's like, yes, we can see that we've been really blessed and that people in other countries have it way worse. And, you know, maybe that lands for some people and maybe that feels really distant for others. For me, that feels pretty distant at times where I don't have access to the actual felt sense of that. But then we paint a picture of the times that we're in and just there is a sense of urgency right now. And also like the place within you that does feel called to this. And the last piece I want to tie in here is like, yes, it's lonely sometimes on this journey. And yes, it's really hard. And yes, I have days where I wonder if I should just go get a corporate job and quit this whole thing. But there is such a richness of aliveness on this path. Because the victories, the wins, they feel so good because I know what it took to get there. I know those little wins, every single subscriber. It's like, because I know the vulnerability that it takes for me to lean into this every single time, the courage that it took to do this differently. I know the pain of, I mean, living at home is not painful, but like, you know, these sacrifices that I have had to make. Because I'm believing in something bigger than me, this dream and like this belief that through this path that I'm walking, through the kind of life that I'm creating, that this is for the benefit of me, but it's for the benefit of all beings. That's the driving force. Because I know that the life that I'm wanting to create is the life that's going to fill my tank the most, fill my cup the most in all ways. And that in itself, me expressing through life in that way with a overflowing cup full of life, full of, you know, my seed growing, it's like that is who is going to be the most benefit to the entire world.
What you're talking about right now with like the impact, all the different relations and connections, and there's two things that feel really key to highlight here. One is like, no matter what you have, no matter what I have, I can always intentionally bring an energy that, like, I'm going to be bringing an energy whether I want to or not. And like, I get to be that filtering function of like, even if I don't have a lot of other things in life, the impact that I have in my relations, the energy that I'm bringing in my relations, the level of peace and tranquility that I've carved and built in my own internal world, the level of optimism, the level of presence, the level of awareness, like that's a different way to show up than me sitting in interaction with somebody like biting my fingernails, just like worrying about like the 10 things that I've been worrying about every day for the last like 3 months. Like that is one key thing that I feel there as well. Like the big tie-in is there's this model that I've been working with for a while now that like feels really key here, which is like I, you, Blake, me, Michael, where I am in this present moment, I am the guardian at the gate, and behind me is like the entire village of all of my future days, not like a stranger, not like not some distant, disconnected, like thought form concept, but like every day of my past, I was that guardian at the gate. And everything that I am dealing with now, everything that I'm going through right now is the consequence of the choices that I made when I was that guardian, when I was in that position of deciding what I let in the gate and what I say, not today. Hey, not today. We got a whole family to watch out for here. This idea of like the future self, not just as an individual, not just like projecting out into like, oh, tomorrow evening, that's my future self. And then I'll have another tomorrow evening, but being able to see that as an entire collective, as like however many days you have left on this earth, however many days you have left to live, that entire group, the decisions that I make today will influence the entire family of every single future self. Every single interaction that those future selves have, the beliefs that they have, what they feel is possible, the level of optimism, the level of presence, the level of like peace and love that they're able to bring. And that cascades and ripples out in such a huge way. All of the relations, all of the paths of people that I will ever cross, and all of the paths that I will cut off by staying within this bubble of familiarity, by staying within my comfort zone. Like all the events that I didn't go to because I didn't feel good about myself, all of the conversations that I didn't have, all of the people that I could have just like, if I was following my instincts and like out in the environment and just like this is a growth edge for me. How many times have you talked to the person that you felt there was a reason to talk to? How many times have you like just talked to a stranger just to say hi and get to know them? That used to be like not as the general you, that used to be like a game that I was playing with myself, and I would try to do that, but like there's a lot of, let me bring this back. There is a responsibility that we have as the present point of consciousness, as the one experiencing life. Like there's a whole array of decisions that we can make, and there's a lot of comfort and familiarity that will invite us to be the way that we've been before. But I believe that the realization of dreams lies beyond that comfort zone, lies beyond that threshold, and lies in that undifferentiated world of potential. That whatever part of me is the skydiver, whatever part of me of like the human collective is the one that like goes down to Portugal, sees 150-foot waves and is just like, yeah, I'm gonna go surf that. The part of me that like feels it's like, I'm gonna get my 500 skydive so I can get a squirrel suit and just like soar at like 250 miles an hour, like 20 feet above the tree line. Like there's I want to feed that more.
Yeah.
And not just for the rush, but for like honor the part of me that is constantly going to be inviting me like, hey, like come see what it's like. Come see what it's like on this side of your fear. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, bro. So good. So good. I had such a visceral sense when you talked about that point in consciousness, the responsibility we hold to lean into those edges in our life, because chasing your dreams, behavior change, all these things require leaning into those edges of resistance within ourselves, which is such a felt sense, like to not do the thing, developing that muscle when you see the wave, when you see the dream that says, I'm going to go do it. Like that's the muscle. And, you know, a common thread throughout this whole conversation feels like, you know, those stretch zones in our life of like getting good, being in the zone of a healthy stretch. How can we keep implementing healthy stretch zones within our life to lean into and get better at? But something that, you know, you speak of that, you know, I've learned so much from is this concept of doing things in devotion to your future self. And then also like this guardian of all of your past selves that now you're experiencing the consequence of having a broken drawbridge, so to speak, in the past. And I love that so much. And this actually feels so incredibly important because when we're talking about, everything that we're talking about and doing really is coming down to like behavior change. And I think one of the greatest skills we can learn within behavior change is learning to bring meaning and importance to all of the minute, small moments throughout your day. And I think a huge part of that is bringing in myth and story. And I feel that is what you're doing with this guardian and with being in devotion to your future self. You're tying in that it's more than just you. This isn't just for you. This is for the community. Your future
It's
self
for the
being a part of a
village.
community. It's for the village.
It's for the
It's like,
whole village of me and everything else that will ever interact with me.
and everything that came before you. This is for your
Mm-hmm.
lineages, your ancestral lineages, the 7 generations before and after. Like, how can we bring that level of importance and meaning and the sacred to those little moments during your day when you want to go back on Instagram and check your phone, but you know that you need to go on a walk or stretch or get in the cold plunge or read your book or answer the email, whatever it is. Like, that muscle feels so huge. And I think we've both like come quite a bit with that. And I know I have still so much more to cultivate that, but it's kind of just cultivating the meaning of your life. Like recognizing how meaningful your existence is, your individual existence in your echo chamber, living in your mom's basement in Kansas, whatever it is, how important your life is. Like, really, how meaningful your existence is in every single moment that you choose to lean into that stretch zone. How important that is.
And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, "Oh, that's not me," I invite you to feel into what a more empowered myth might be, where your life would actually be so meaningful that you would show up every day excited, elated, in devotional joy to be that guardian, to make the choices, to stretch beyond the familiar, and reach into that unknown and pull down the vision of the future that you have for yourself. Pull in the new you, because it is not a passive process to rewrite your story. It's not a passive process to build your life.
Mm-hmm.
Is very much, very active, very much constantly in a state of uncertainty. But being able to ride that storm and doing the foundational work to set yourself up, set your life up in a way where that does not feel like something beyond your reach, where that feels like something that's inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
I I I've
Mm-hmm.
heard. I mean, for some people, it's basketball. For Kobe, it was basketball. He's going to be the best, and
Yeah.
I think that is the generalizable principle from Kobe. It's like, I'm going to be I'm going to be the best me that I can possibly be. That's something that I can do no matter what. Nobody can be a better me than I can.
Mm-hmm. Yes, dude. And writing your story, rewriting your story, because we all have a story, but most of our stories have been written by someone else, by our culture, by these outdated narratives. And so, yes, rewriting your story is an active process. And for many of us, like Godzi talks about, like, what happens is that life pushes us to our knees where our stories breaks. Doesn't have to come to that. Maybe it does for some of you, but rewriting your story is an active process. And the thing, coming back to this stretch zone, it's like rewriting a new story built on something more beautiful might feel like a stretch for you. And that's okay. Again, let's have a healthy stretch there. And this is where dare to believe comes in. Like, dare to believe in that story. It might feel like a leap. You might have to hop over a little stream of disbelief and resistance to start to cultivate the belief in this new story. Because most of the stories that feel comfortable and familiar to us are built on outdated narratives, are built on disempowerment, are built on victimhood, are built on the belief that you can't achieve your dreams. And so rewriting these new stories that that are built on things more beautiful, things like we are talking about, it's going to be going against the grain of everything you have probably believed throughout your life. And so there is going to be this little leap of faith. So dare to believe in this new story. And even if 5% of you is what believes in that, that's good enough. But every day we come back and we breathe life into that flame, that 5% of you. And it starts to grow and expand, because the thing about that place within you that believes in something more and something more beautiful is that that's connected to the core of your being. And that's more powerful than any of these other stories. That's more powerful than the pressure and weight that our culture has put on us, these old, outdated stories. Those will start to fall away as this flame of something more beautiful grows within you.
Beautiful, brother.
I think we're about good there, yeah?
I think we're
Any
about good.
final words you want to say? Anywhere you want to plug the peeps? Any final final words?
For now, I just want to plant one little seed that the first relationship of mentorship that I encountered in my life shared a tool, and that tool was to feel back into the areas in my life where I felt lost, where I felt alone, where I felt a deep wound, where I felt that sensation of being completely on my own, and to be with that child version of myself as I am now, and just imagine what it would have been like for somebody to be there and ask, "Hey, how do you feel about what just happened? Like, you can
Mm,
tell me whatever is true. Like, no matter what you say, I'm gonna be right here. I'm not gonna go anywhere. Like, you can be real, and I'll be here until you're ready to talk." And that little piece of medicine turned the tide on my internal story of wrongness, because I realized that that is what the child in me needed, was just somebody to care enough to say, "Hey man, how you feeling about that? I'll be right here whenever you're ready. It's all good. And I'll be here for the rest of your life." That one seed, that one little grain of sand in an ocean of depth and sorrow, is and will always be enough to transform that story of aloneness. You will be there. You can be there for all of your past selves, all of your future selves, all of your current selves. You don't have to do it alone. There's a lot of forces available. There's a lot of good people available. So
mm,
yeah, don't need to
mm.
don't need to do it by yourself.
Your current self is the one all of your past selves were looking for. We're waiting for. Beautiful, man. Well, it's so good to dance with you. And please check out all of Michael's beautiful posts and writings and things that I'll link in the show notes. And if you are resonating with this message and you feel lit up by it, I encourage you to reach out. Not only, follow us and subscribe, all those things too, but like reach out, leave a comment, like hit us up in our DMs, because the thing is that we're all kind of faking it till we make it. We're all trying to figure this out because we haven't been given a roadmap. And it really is a grassroots movement of people just coming together, starting to gather again, starting to share ideas and collaborations and all those things. And so, yeah, please reach out because it's really meaningful. Um, but for all of you who are still listening, thank you so much for lasting this long with all of us, for tuning in, for blessing us with your presence. And we look forward to seeing you on many, many more